Bahar B'chukosai. So, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Bahar Sinai lemor. Hashem speaks to Moshe on Har Sinai. And the what do you call it? The 696 for the top of the page. Hashem speaks to Moshe at Har Sinai. If you take a look at the Rashi, crucial Rashi here, they're all crucial, but this is still crucial for us to see. Bahar Sinai. Ma inyan Shmita etzel Har Sinai. Why does the Torah emphasize that this law, we're going to be talking about the laws of Shmita, why does the Torah introduce it with saying it was Har Sinai? V'halo kol mitzvahs never said. All the mitzvahs were said at Sinai. Why does why is this unique? It doesn't say that Hashem tells Moshe about the non-kosher animals, which we had a couple of parshas ago. He doesn't start it out by saying, well, Hashem spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai. He spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai about everything. Elama Shmita, just as Shmita, Nemru Klolosev Diktukabi Sinai, just as Shmita, all the general rules and the specifics and the details were said at Sinai. Af Kulon Nemru Klolosev Diktukabi Sinai. So too, all the mitzvahs, their specifics and the general and the specifics and the details, it all came from Sinai. That's what the Torah says. Okay. So what we need to do is, first of all, what is Shmita? Shmita means that every 7 years you have to let the land grow fallow. Fallow is right, not fallow. It's not fellow. Fellow means a guy, right? You have to let the land go fallow. And fullo means nothing. So, and philo is like pillow. But you have to fallow, I think it's a verb, you fallow the land. I think you let the ground go fallow. I'm not sure. Whatever the case is, you know what I mean. So at the end of the day, you let the land go. Every farmer has to let the land go, and the land is hefker officially, and then everybody's allowed to go into his land and take the fruits and the produce and so on and so forth every 7 years. And the basic idea behind Shmita is a reminder to us that just as Shabbos reminds us that the time is not ours and the world is not ours, Shmita reminds us that Eretz Yisrael is not ours. This only applies in Eretz Yisrael, and it's a reminder that the land doesn't belong to us. It belongs to Hashem. He makes the rules. Just as He makes the rules which days of the week we are allowed to work and which way we're not, which is Shabbos, He makes the rules when to work the land and when not, which is an entire year. Now, there are practical applications. I don't remember when the Shmita year is coming up. Probably in about 2-3 years we have a Shmita year in Eretz Yisrael, and then it's still the laws of Shmita apply nowadays. A lot of the laws are D'Rabbanan, but the laws apply nowadays. And in Eretz Yisrael, there are arrangements of what to do with the produce, how the farmers who keep Shmita, how they market their produce, but they're not allowed to market it at a profit. But there are all sorts of arrangements that are made nowadays, but Shmita does apply. And the produce of Shmita has to be treated a certain way. It's got what's called Kedusha Shvis. The produce has a certain level of Kedusha to it, so you can't do certain things with it. You can only eat it the normal way. You can't waste it. All sorts of technical level. I'm not going to go into that right now. The point is, and the question is, what's the idea over here? So one of the ideas that the Meforshim say is that Jews are meant to be compassionate people. And one of the areas that we have to learn to be compassionate is the haves have to be compassionate to the have-nots. And the Shmita reminds a person, every 7 years you get to feel what it's like to be homeless. In this case, it's not homeless, it's landless. But there are people who don't have, there are people who don't own. And I, who am the owner of land, now every 7 years I'm reminded what it's like to be unemployed and what it's like to not own land. That's the basic idea behind Shmita. It's also a reminder that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. Now, the question is, why is Shmita connected to Har Sinai? Which Rashi says, and that tells us that just like Shmita, the laws came from Har Sinai, so too all the other laws of the Torah. So the answer is like this. There's all these, all through history, there have been the skeptics who said, well, Torah was man-made. Man gave the laws of the Torah. So there are all sorts of rational reasons and explanations why that can't be, and that can't possibly be. But you see, if somebody would tell you, the laws of not eating non-kosher food, okay, so I can live with that. You can't have shellfish. I'll eat salmon. I'm good. I have no problem. Not sushi, but salmon, yeah, not raw. Not raw. We eat it cooked, gentlemen. Number one. I don't know if any of you like sushi. How many of you like sushi? Okay, well, you shouldn't. Number one. Number two, if they tell you you can't wear wool and linen in your clothing. All right, a human being made it. Okay, a creative imagination. All right, I could deal with that. You can't speak Lashon Hara. All right, this seems to be a nice man who made up this law. We shouldn't speak bad about other people. Now, just imagine a guy comes along and he makes up a law. If it's man-made, he makes up a law. Everybody has to become unemployed every 7 years. All farmers in America are not allowed to produce, are not allowed to work, and the corn and grain and soybean economy is going to crash. Now, what human being would try to pass that law on people? Even now, Trump with his tariffs, which whatever the tariffs mean and whatever the tariffs are, the whole world's in a panic over the tariffs. Right? And he's not telling anybody to be unemployed. And even that he's having trouble getting. Can you imagine a human being making up a law like this and then telling you, oh, by the way, guys, just be unemployed for every 7 years, okay? You're good with that, yeah? Yeah, Shabbos I could handle. Don't drive your car. Fine, I'll stay home and eat. I've never had any objection to that. Have some jolt, that's good. Okay, it's an inconvenience. Can't use my computer on Shabbos. I can live with it. Fast on Yom Kippur, 1 day a year. Nishkefer cleans out the system. Nishkefer, be unemployed. Oh, not that. Not when you get to my wallet. Leave my wallet alone. So no human being would have or could have possibly. I had a guy once who became a Baal Tshuva. Somebody asked him, what inspired him to become a Baal Tshuva? So he said he was reading a book on the laws of Shabbos, and he was reading the section on forbidden selection. That you're not allowed to pull your tomatoes out of the salad if you don't like the tomatoes. You can't pull away the bad from the good. You only take the good from the bad. You can't. That's forbidden. It's called borer. So the guy said he was reading the laws of Shabbos and he got to the section of borer and that inspired him, and because of that he became frum. So the guy said to him, "What about borer did you find inspiring?" I mean, the laws of borer are as technical as you get. He said, "No human being would care or could care if I pull my tomatoes away from my cucumbers or my cucumbers away from the tomatoes." A law like that could only have come from God. Nobody would have made this. This has to be true. That's what the guy said. See, when you try to talk about a law like Shmita, who could have possibly made that up? So that's why the connection. Shmita came from Sinai. That's proof. There's your proof. That's all the proof you need. They obviously came from Sinai. And if Shmita came from Sinai, so all other laws of the Torah came from Sinai, and all other details of the Torah came from Sinai. That's why the Torah, that's what, according to one of them, that's why the Torah connects up Sinai to Har Sinai, to Shmita to Har Sinai. Because it can't be that a human being would even try, no human being would or could try to even promulgate a law like that. That could only have come from a God, number one. Number two, later on we're going to see that God promises you that if you keep Shmita, so then the land will produce a bumper crop in the 6th year, so you'll have all the things you didn't do in the 7th year, and you'll even have for the 8th year, and when the 50th year comes around, then you have 2 years in a row that you can't work the land, the 49th year and the 50th year, and you'll have 4 years produce. What human being can make a promise like that? Can you imagine Trump saying, don't worry, my tariffs will be good, the economy is going to go up. Don't worry, it'll be good for the economy. Even that's something which you could argue about. Nobody's going to accept that. Imagine listen, if a stockbroker could tell you that all the time, don't worry, trust me, kid, this stock's going up for the next 3 years. Yeah, I'm talking about without insider trading. Right? So if a guy could do that, well, who could possibly do that? If the guy could do it, he himself should be a multi-trillionaire. So the Torah is telling you that here you have a law. I mean, think about it, guys. Here you have a law where it can't possibly be that a human being made it up. It must have come from Sinai. Well, if this one came from Sinai, so all the other laws that don't make sense to us at a human level, if you touch a dead body, the only way to get purified is with the ashes of a red cow. Boy, this guy was having a day. I don't know what he was on, but boy, is he creative. Okay, red cow. Okay, once in a while we'll get some ashes of red cow. But okay, you want to argue as a human being, but no human being can tell you be unemployed. Nobody could possibly tell you that, and therefore the Torah connects it up to Sinai. That's number one. Okay, so the Torah goes through the laws of Sinai. Now, the other thing it's trying to teach us, obviously, is the concept of faith. The Hashem is saying to you, you think that by working the land, you work the land for 6 years, and you produce. By the way, ironically, they have found agriculturally that leaving, and this is a theme that we always come back to, farmers who work the field for 6 years straight, letting it go for the 7th year and not working it, somehow that helps the soil to replenish itself with nutrients. So ironically, another law of the Torah where you always look at the laws of the Torah, and you will find in most of the laws, not that that's why the law was given, and not that's the only reason the law was given, but you will find human benefits. If we don't find human benefits, we got to keep the law anyway. But there are plenty of examples. For example, you can't eat pork, so Jews don't suffer from trichinosis poisoning. How do you like that? Ironically. Whereas, okay, nowadays they may take care of it with all sorts of pasteurization and whatever it is. Okay, let's say they figure out ways to kill the bacteria. At the end of the day, that's not the reason, but it's certainly a benefit. If from Jewish women have the lowest incidence of cervical cancer of any group in the world, well, obviously there's a benefit to the laws of family purity. So you find this all over the place in the Torah where you find certain benefits. So ironically, we can't work the land of Israel for once every 7 years, but ironically there's actually a benefit in that the soil replenishes itself. But the underlying reason for Shmita, the ultimate underlying reason for Shmita is to teach us to have faith in God. That's to teach us faith. You have to have bitachon, have trust in God. We are deceived because we work, some people work anyway, we work and you earn, it's considered a good job. A good job is when you get good pay. That's a great job. You get more pay for less work. That's considered a great job. So sometimes a guy goes to work, guys that works, and you're an accountant or a dentist, whatever, and you make a problem. So we think that's because we're doing it. Guy works the soil, and he's planting, and he's harvesting, and he's producing. So the Torah says there's one area of life where a person runs the biggest risk of thinking, I did it. And that's where it comes to agriculture. Turn back for a second. Keep the finger on the place. Turn back to Parshat Noach for a second. All the way back in Parshat Noach. On page 42. Page 42. Now Noach comes out of the teva. He comes out of the flood. And then on page 42 it says, Vayhi b'nei Noach hayotzi min hateva, Shem v'cham v'yofes. 4 lines from the bottom. You see where that is? V'cham hu avi Canaan. Shlosh elu b'nei Noach u'meilu nafso chol haaretz. These are 3 sons. Then it says, 2 lines from the bottom. Vayochel Noach ish ha'adaba. Noach became a man of the earth. Vayitakar, he planted a vineyard. It's a very strange turn of phrase. Why does it call Noach he became a man of the earth? Why doesn't it just say that Noach planted a vineyard or that Noach became a farmer? Why is he a man of the earth? The answer is that agriculture is addictive. It's a labor of love. Farmers get up at the crack of dawn and they're out there working morning to night, and you're planting, you're harvesting, you're plowing, you're planting, you're harvesting, and there's a you could easily slip into I did it mode. I planted, I harvested, it grew, I did it. Kochi ve'otzem yodi. I accomplished. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, hold it, that's dangerous. Once every 7 years, I want you to know that even without you doing anything, you will get. So that ultimately you have to realize that's what bitachon is. Bitachon means they're realizing that whatever it is that we're doing or accomplishing in life, that ultimately that it's coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In this way, the entire nation has that reminder for an entire year. In Israel, the farmers don't work, and there are funds that are created to support the Shmita observant farmers here in Israel. They create funds for them, and it takes a lot. The people who keep Shmita, the pasuk refers to them as giborei koach. Tremendous strength of character to have to keep the Shmita year if you're a farmer. I mean, understand. And let's say you're an accountant, and you're taking a year off, a sabbatical, but without pay. How are you going to support your family? What are you going to do? It takes a tremendous strength of character, number one. Number two, it takes even more strength of character, because could you imagine, a guy has a store, Guy's got a shop, and he closes normally at 7 o'clock at night. At 7 o'clock, his shop is still packed with people who are buying and purchasing. You think he's going to close the door? Why not? Why not?
He has customers.
And therefore,
He'll make money.
he's going to make money. And if you're making money and they're willing to stay and pay, it's a labor of love. This guy's got a productive field. It's not like things are going bad anyway, and therefore, all right, I may as well shut down for a year. Things are going well. To walk away when things are productive is very, that's a double difficulty. It's not that things aren't going well. Things are going very well. And you got to shut, 7 o'clock, that's it, everybody out. We're not talking about Israel. That happens in Israel. When I first got here, I was in a hardware store. I just made Aliyah. I'm in the hardware store. I had to buy a screwdriver. The place was packed. I just remember the guy had a bad runny nose. The guy owning the store, I just remember that, and he's blowing his nose constantly. And at a certain point, I picked up the screwdriver. I said to the guy, "Can I pay for this?" So the guy stops what he's doing. He turns to me and goes, "Listen, I don't need you. You need me. You want to wait? Wait. You don't want to wait? Leave." So the guy, I waited. I needed the screwdriver. Great customer service. I needed this. All right, but most people wouldn't send everybody out of the store. You're making money, and here they got to close down. That's the idea. Okay, so I had a guy here in the yeshiva back in the Gulf War, 1991, when Saddam Hussein, he should rest in pieces. So he was threatening to what do you call it? To chemical bomb Israel. So there were rules by the defense establishment when they set off a siren. So you had to go to a sealed room, and in the yeshiva they had a sealed room. We had all the dormitories had sealed rooms. I had sealed rooms at home, and we actually wore gas masks. You know, you see stuff you see on TV, wearing a gas mask. And my son was about 6 months old at the time. We had even a little gas tent for him. Boy, you haven't lived till you put your kid in a gas tent because you think you're under gas attack. That was fun. So the what do you call it? There was a guy in the yeshiva at the time who was like a free-spirited Californian. He looked like he stepped right off the cover of Surfers magazine. And he comes to me before, and he's starting to get religious, and he says to me, "Is it okay the next time the siren goes off, could I go to the Beis Medrash and stand by the Aron Kodesh instead of going up to my sealed room?" I said to him, "No." He said, "Why?" So I said, "First of all, because the yeshiva has to follow the defense establishment rules, otherwise it could be a negative backlash on the yeshiva. Second of all, if you go stand in front of the Aron Kodesh, you'll be convinced that the only reason that you're safe is because Hashem is watching over you. What you need to do is go into your sealed room, and then when nothing happens to you, realize it's because Hashem is watching over you." That's the bigger challenge. If you're buying our own Kodesh and you're safe, well, that's easy. Go up to your sealed room and then realize that your sealed room is not what protected you. Especially, what did we do? We put Scotch tape on. Oh, that'll stop chemical. We had taped down the windows and the door. Oh, that'll stop it. Yeah, that'll work. But that's what we did. So go into your room and realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching you over there. That's the idea. You know, there's something in Australia. Is he here? Shimmy's not here. In Australia. Are you here, Shimmy? What does it mean to do a Bradbury?
It's like a fluke wind.
It's what?
It's like a fluke.
It's like a fluke. It's like a fluke. What's a Bradbury? There was a guy named Stephen Bradbury who was a speed skater. And he was in the Olympics. He's an Australian speed skater. In the finals, he was in the final for the gold medal. There was like an American and a Frenchman and a Russian ahead of him. And a short, not too far from the finish line, one of them tripped the second guy, tripped the third guy. They all fell, and Bradbury, who was firmly in fourth place, skated through, and he won the gold medal in the Olympics. And he said he didn't even know, what do you do when you win? Are you supposed to raise your hands up? What do you do? He was so unexpected. And then he said that in the semifinals, he was also running fourth, and the guy in third place had fallen in the semifinals. And he said part of his strategy was hoping people would fall. That was his strategy. In Australia, what Shimmy calls a fluke wind, what we call the clear hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving somebody something completely unexpected, in Australia they call it to do a Bradbury, because Stephen Bradbury won the gold medal. So a person has to understand life. When Bradburys happen, a person has to understand that he is experiencing the hand of Hashem. Okay. Then go to Pasuk Ches. 4 lines from the bottom. By the way, there's an apocryphal story of a guy who says, God, there's a poor man. He says to Hashem, how much is 1,000 years to you? So Hashem says, 1,000 years to me is a minute. He says, Hashem, how much is $1 million to you? He says, $1 million to me is a penny. So the guy smiles. He says, Hashem, could I have a penny? He says, sure, in a minute. What that means is, you believe or you don't believe. You got to believe all the way over here. It's not like a half belief, not half belief. We believe or we don't believe. So he's running the whole program. That's the idea. Okay. In Pasuk Ches, it says like this: V'safarta lecha sheva shanim v'safarta lecha sheva shabsos shanim. Count 7 units of 7 years. Sheva shanim sheva pa'amim. 7 years 7 times. V'hayu lecha yemei sheva shabsos hashanim teisha ve'arbaim shana. It'll be 49 years. And then v'avarta shofar trua b'chodesh asher. You blow a shofar in the 7th month. Be'eser lachodesh. That's Yom Kippur of the 50th year. Biyom HaKippurim taviru shofar b'chol artechem. You blow a shofar. What is going on here? This is what's called the Jubilee Year. Jubilee is the Yovel. The Yovel year is the Jubilee year. V'kidashtem eshnasa chamishim shana. You shall sanctify the 50th year. Ukrasem dror ba'oretz l'chol yosher. You proclaim liberty throughout the land. Yovel hitiyeh lachem. V'shavtem isha lachuzaso v'isha b'shpachto tashuvu. All people go home. That means, that there's a halacha that if an Eved Ivri, a Hebrew slave, he works in the first unit is how long? How long does the Eved Ivri work for? The first unit, 6 years. If he chooses to stay on, what happens? What do? They drill his ear, and then he stays on, what the Torah says, he stays le'olam, which is forever, but it's not forever, it's until the Yovel year. And at the Yovel year, everybody goes home. And not only that, land that was sold in Israel is sold until the Yovel year. And then land goes back. In other words, when you bought land in those days, you bought land, it was in essence a long-term rental. And when you bought a field, the calculation of the price of the field was how many seasons of crops it's going to produce until the Yovel year, and it goes back to the original owner. So if it's 10 years before the Yovel, that's going to be a cheaper field than if you bought it 40 years before the Yovel, because it goes back to the owner. And again, there are many details here, but that's basically what happens. And you blow the shofar on the Yom Kippur of the year, and everybody goes free. So first of all, the Mefarshim, what's the idea of blowing the shofar? And then everybody goes free. So you got a guy on your property who's been with you for all these years, and you've gotten used to having some extra help. And then the guy is going to go free, and not only that, you're going to have to, you load him up with various gifts, the Gemara says. You have to give the guy certain goodbye gifts, and it costs you a pretty penny. Have you ever heard the idea, why is it, if you're in trouble, when you guys were in high school, I'm sure none of you were ever in trouble in high school, Cab, right? I'm sure that as straight A students, A stands for absent. Straight A student. I'm sure that you never threw anything, ingested anything, did any. I'm sure that you were all good. But for those who ever got in trouble, and you're in the principal's office and you're sitting there stewing away, and you're like, oh boy, my parents are gonna kill me. They're gonna myrtleize me. And then the door opens, and all of a sudden your friend Steve comes in also. He's tossed in with you. Then how do you feel? A lot better. Why is that? Right? True or not true? Right? The stock market, you're all upset because the stock market's down and you lost some money. And you're really in the dumps. Then you meet a guy in Shiloh, he says, boy, I lost a pile yesterday on the Dow. Yeah, the Dow is down. I lost how do you feel then? Oh, I feel a little bit better. Why is that? What kind of miserable people are we? Right? If my car is stuck in the snow, I feel horrible. But then I get up and start, try digging out. Then the guy next to me, he also skids and gets stuck. Yeah. Oh, good. It didn't do anything for me. Why is that? So the Gemara says, Tzoras rabim chatzi nechama. When the community is suffering, that's half of a consolation. That's half of the consolation. Nobody wants to be alone in the pile. But when there are other people suffering too, that takes away some of the pain. Why? That's human nature. Tzoras rabim chatzi nechama, which, by the way, is the idea of comforting mourners. Do you know the Gemara says that when one comforts a mourner, nobody should have to, but we do. It's a big mitzvah. So I was just recently at the house of mourning. I just recently had to go in a very, very rough situation. And as I got there, there's a guy in the hallway. He says, I just don't know what to say. So I said to the guy, don't say anything. Don't say anything. The Gemara says the reward for going to the house of a mourner is for silence. So what are you going for? The answer is there's nothing you could say to somebody. Somebody suffered a serious loss. You can't say, what can you possibly say? And don't get philosophical. Listen, he's got a gilgul, he's a high neshama. It doesn't help. It makes it worse. It sounds like you're downplaying his pain. You go there for sight. Why? You're showing the person you're not alone. That's all. It's the physical presence of being there that shows the person you're not alone in your pain. When a person suffers a loss, part of the intensity of the pain of the loss is the sense that he's all alone. There's a sense of alone. I'm alone in this. So a guy who the market's down, he feels he's alone in his sorrow. Till somebody else, the chauffeur on the 50th year is to remind you you're not alone. When you hear this, oh good, he's got to let his slave go free too, and he's got to give him money also. Oh good, we're all in this together. And that takes away some of the pain. But the Mepharshim say like this, how does this apply to us? We don't have it nowadays. The answer is that the 50 years is a reminder of a lifespan. Up till 20, the person's not responsible for his actions. I mean, we are, but in the court down here punishes, but the court upstairs doesn't punish till after 20 years old. That means once a person's bar mitzvah, it's actionable in Beis Din. If a guy murders somebody when he's 15 years old, so Beis Din has to take him out. But in Shemayim, it's a different din. Why? Because the person hasn't reached full emotional adult maturity until 20 years old. But on the other hand, a society has to function. You get a 16-year-old teenager who's 6'4", he can be very, very dangerous if he's not accountable. There's got to be some sort of way to run a society. At 20 years old, the clock starts ticking. And the clock ticks till 70 years old, because that's the average lifespan for men, according to the Pasuk. Yemesh noseinu b'hem shivim shana. Our lifespan is 70 years. V'im bigvuros, if we're really healthy, shmonim shana, 80 years. Some people live to 90, 100, but that's what the Pasuk says. What's that? Very few people live to 120. The oldest lady in the world just recently died. She was 116. So a person, the average lifespan, so it starts counting at 50. Start counting, gentlemen. That's what the Torah is telling us. At 20 years old, start tracking time. If a person doesn't track time, it is a way of getting away from him. Bum around here, bum around there, waste some time here, waste some time there. Next thing you know, the guy's 35 or 40 and hasn't accomplished anything, hasn't even gotten started yet. So the Torah is telling you, start counting. Time is passing. Start counting. And then when you get to the 70 years, they blow the chauffeur and the slave goes free. Who's the slave? The neshama in the body. The neshama is a slave. The neshama doesn't want to be here. The neshama is trapped in a body. The neshama was up there in Shemayim enjoying the presence of God, and he got the tap, okay, you're going in. I'd really rather not. Right? No, now it's your time. Yeah, but this guy lives in Cleveland. Yeah. We're sorry. We're sorry. This is your Gilgal. You were bad in the previous life. You got to go to Cleveland. Ha ha. So the neshama doesn't want to be here. You're trapped. You're trapped. So, and on the seventh year, the neshama goes free. That's it. That means the person. Okay, so obviously the average lifespan is a little bit longer now, but the Torah says 70 years. Keep track time till the Yovel year, till the freedom. That's the lesson of the Yovel. Okay, now take a look at pasuk Yud Daled, 14. When you make a sale to your fellow man, pasuk 14, 698, about halfway down the page. When you sell something or you buy something, don't cheat each other. Now here Rashi explains how you make the calculation of buying land, but it's a general Torah law of not cheating people in business. And the Torah over here, it's emphasizing that you have to be, in business, you have to be impeccably honest. So you're not allowed, for example, you're not allowed to sell an item and make it look better than it is. If you're selling a used car, you can't go and paint it up to create the impression that it's a much newer car than it really is. You could paint it and tell the guy, by the way, this is a 14-year-old Kolel car, and I painted it up so it should look like it's a 1-year-old car. That you could do, but you can't create a false impression. You can't mix fruit. For example, the Gemara says to mix bad produce with good produce and just mix it in there without telling the customer. So if you tell the customer, that's something else. But if the classic example in the Gemara is in a market society where they have a market price. We don't really have market prices nowadays. But if you have, we've learned this in the Gemara. Remember we learned in the Gemara, what's the limit that a person could go back on the deal if you cheat him? Do you remember what it is? 1/6. That means, let's say a table, the market price for these tables is $100. You come into my shop not knowing the market price, and I charge you $150 for it. When you find out that you were cheated for more than 1/6 the price, then you could go back on the entire deal. That's what's called an onoah. You have cheated me. I've cheated you. You've cheated me. That's in a society where there's a market. We don't have market society today because every store, every shop charges whatever they want. But in a market price society, that's one rule. The other rule is you're not allowed to create a deception. Any sort of deception in business is considered cheating in business. They had an interesting Shiloh that came to Zilverstein. There was a guy who was fundraising. He was fundraising for a good cause, and he was in Argentina. He was in the Jewish community in Argentina. He got donations from various people, and he collected a few $1,000s. It was a fundraiser. So he went to the local Rav, and he said to the Rav, "Listen, I've collected a few $1,000s over here. Do you mind if I don't want the cash? Could you give me a check?" So the Rav said, "I'll do him a favor." So writes him out a $2,000 check. The guy takes the check. The next night, he had a parlor meeting with some wealthy guys in Argentina, and he said, "Look, even the Rav gave me $2,000, so I think that you guys could, I think you guys come across over here, And so you're not allowed to do that. No, you're creating a deception. You're perpetrating a deception. In business, even for a good cause, you have to be impeccably honest. This applies. The rule when it comes to money issues is don't paskin yourself. Whether it's damages or whether it's interpersonal, he owes me money, don't paskin yourself, because when it comes to money, we always paskin in our own favor. When it comes to money carries a very, very warm place in our heart. It occupies a warm place in our heart. Don't paskin money questions on your own. So if there was a guy who got on a bus in Bnei Brak. He had to drive from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim. So when he got on the bus, he had a suitcase. So he asked the bus driver to open up the thing so he could put the suitcase underneath in the baggage hold. When he got to the baggage hold was all crowded with suitcases already. So he started pushing the suitcases inside, and he couldn't get enough leverage. So he crawled into the baggage hold to move the suitcases around. And for Shteitzach, it's Israel. The bus driver didn't remember that he was there. He pushed the button, closed the baggage hold, closed the guy into the baggage hold, and drove from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim with the guy in the baggage hold. The guy's banging on the bottom of the bus, and he could, okay, gets to Yerushalayim. The guy gets out of the bus, and he makes one phone call. Who did he call? What did he want?
He wanted to know if he needed to pay the fire.
Correct. He called her. I would have called a lawyer. He called a Rav to find out, does he have to pay for the ride from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim? You assume you don't? How do you know? How do you know? You're sure? You've mastered the laws of Chosh and Mishpat? You know all the laws? You don't know? Ask. Could be the Rav will tell you, yeah, you should sue them. Could be. On the other hand, maybe you have to pay. You got there. What was the answer? What did the Rav say?
You shouldn't pay because
Normal.
no other person, known person in those circumstances would pay.
Nobody would, right, if given a choice, anybody over the age of 17, maybe 19, given a choice, if given a choice, I would rather not be in the baggage hold for free. I'll sacrifice, I'll walk. I'm not going in a baggage hold from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim, so you don't have to pay. There's teenagers would probably pay to be in the baggage hold. They probably pay double, that sort of thing. So remember, there are people in the world who pay to get on roller coasters, and the entire time they spend thinking, boy, I wish I wasn't on here. And then they get off the roller coaster, like, oh, it's good to be on solid ground again. Oh, listen, nobody twisted your arm to get up there. You did that by choice. So, but the point is, the guy asked the question, because he knew maybe I have to pay. Maybe I have to pay. When it comes to money, anything involving money, then a person has to be very cautious. There's another. I once walked into a shop in Israel. I had to buy. I think I had to buy an iron. So I walked in, and there's a worker in this electronic shop right here in Mea Shearim. So I walked in, and I said to the guy, "How much is this iron over here?" He says, "For you, it's 200 shekels." Just then the owner, from guy, walks out, an older guy. He says, "Don't say for you it's 200 shekels, as if I'm special. He says, for everybody it's 200 shekels, because you're creating a deception. You're creating it." I was very impressed. At the what do you call it? That's a guy. He's obviously an honest guy. Either that or they worked something out to make me think that he's an honest guy, but it wasn't. So you're not allowed to do anything in halacha that creates a deception. There was one other category over here. Yeah, please.
How would it work for markets and shuks and places where you haggle, where there's a custom of haggling?
A haggling is not a problem, because if the guy agrees to sell it to you, that means he's still making a profit. You're allowed to haggle. What you can't do, it's an important question you're asking. What you can't do is you can't pressure somebody to sell something to you. For example, if I walk up there and say, "Sell me, Jack, how much is the thermos?" Jack says, "It's not for sale. I'll give you $10 for the thermos." Jack says, "No." "Oh, come on, Jack, sell me the thermos." "I'll give you $10. No. Which is foolish, because it's not even your thermos. You should sell it. You'd make some money. But I go over, I say, let me buy the thermos. Please, come on, Jack, please. That you're not allowed to do. You can't pressure somebody. To sell you. Did I ever tell you a story about the horse? There's a guy in the marketplace. The guy's a simple shoemaker. And one day he decides he wants to see how people conduct themselves in the business world. So he goes out to the marketplace. He sees a guy selling a horse. Says, 500 rubles for the horse, 500 rubles. Guy walks up and says, "I'll give you 100 rubles. Says, 500 rubles. I'll give you 100 rubles. 450, 100. 400, 100. Gets him all the way down. 101, 100. So the guy says, 100. He says, "Okay, take it for 100. So the guy buys the horse. He walks off happily. Buys the horse for 100 rubles. So the shoemaker's looking. He goes up to the salesman. He goes, "Listen, forgive me. I don't know much about business. I'm a simple shoemaker, but I mean, you wanted 500. You got 20% of the asking price. You didn't do very well on that deal." "I did great on this deal." He says, "But you got 20%. He says, "Listen, the horse is lame. The horse isn't even worth 100 rubles. I said 500. He said 100. He thinks he got a good deal. The horse isn't even worth 100 rubles. Okay, wow, I see you got to be pretty shrewd in business. Goes over to the other guy and says, "Listen, I know you think you're smart, but at the end of the day, the horse isn't even worth 100. The horse is lame." So I know the horse is lame. I don't know the horse is lame. But look at this. He holds up the horse's hoof. It's got a nail in it. He says, I saw the horse was lame, but I also saw the nail. I'll take out the nail. The horse will be fine. I did great on this deal. The guy goes back to the first guy and says, I know you think you're smart. Horse is lame, but the horse has a nail in it. He says, I know the horse has a nail in it. I put the nail in the horse's hoof. See, the horse is lame even without the nail. And I put the nail in because I knew that he'd see the horse is limping. He'd think it's because of the nail, but it's not because of the nails, because the horse is lame anyway. The guy's head is spinning. He said, I know I'm not in business. So he goes back to the first guy. He goes, okay, listen, I know you think you're smart, and I know you think you did well, but the horse's nail, the horse is lame even without the nail. The nail was just to deceive. He said, I did great on this deal. He said, yeah, but the horse is lame anyway. He said, yeah, but the money I gave him is counterfeit. So he goes back to the first guy. He says, okay, now you're going to have to acknowledge defeat. The money he gave you is counterfeit. He said, I did great on this deal. He said, but the money's counterfeit. He said, well, it wasn't my horse to sell to begin with. So all of which is forbidden, start to finish. All of which is a deception, start to finish. That's what the Torah is talking about. Did I tell you about the Rosh Yeshiva with promising the guy the world to come? Didn't sound familiar? So it's an unbelievable story, unbelievable. A guy came to Rosh Yeshiva here in Yerushalayim, and he said to the guy, to the Rosh Yeshiva, listen, I have, what do you call it? I want to donate $4 million to your yeshiva on condition you promise me a portion in the world to come. So Yeshiva said, look, if you donate the money, I could promise you you're doing a mitzvah, a big mitzvah. I can't promise you a portion in the world to come because I don't know anything else about you. I don't know what you're. You may have done averas that cost you the world to come. The guy says, let me make this clear. If you promise me a portion in the world to come, you get the money. If you don't get the money. She said, I can't promise. He says, did you understand what I said? I said, listen, you can promise me all the money in the world. I will not promise you the world to come because I can't make that promise. So the guy says, okay, I want you to know something. There's a man who died, and he left in his will $4 million to your yeshiva. His children challenged the will by saying that you promised him a portion in the world to come, and that's why he willed you the money. I'm an agent of the court. I was sent here to test you. If you would have promised me a portion in the world to come, you would not be getting the money. You didn't promise me. I tried to get you to promise me. I'll report it to the court, and you're going to get the money. He reported to the court. The Shiva got the $4 million. So the rule is, A, you have to be honest because the Torah says to be honest. And B, when you're honest, believe it or not, when they say cheaters never prosper, they do sometimes, but in the long run, you're better off being honest. And in business, people respect you when you're honest. When you do business with people on the other end of the table, they're also pretty shrewd. They also have a judgment, can judge people. And if you're honest, they'll work with you, they'll deal with you. If you try to be shifty, they'll pick up that you're shifty and you're trying to pull one on them, then people aren't going to deal with it. In the end, you lose out. If you ever hear somebody, if the word a shrewd businessman is a dangerous adjective. A shrewd businessman may very well mean that you're doing something which is not halachically acceptable. And therefore, if you do go into business, you have to make sure you know all the halachas about what is and isn't permissible, what you're allowed to show, what you should say, what you have to tell. Let's say you're selling your house, and you know that you've got old pipes that are not that are going to go any minute. Do you have to tell the potential customer, or you don't? So often you do. You have to know what you have to tell and what you don't have to tell. What is faulty and what's not faulty. And it's not simple. You have to find out. Often you have to get a posek involved. Whatever the bottom line is when it comes to money, don't make your own decisions. All right, be TBC as they say.